Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed my tutorial video for Francis Drake and also my sample gameplay video. If you have any questions, of course, always leave them in the YouTube comments below. Now, if you missed the other two videos, I'm going to insert a really quick clip that gives you a general overview of how Francis Drake plays. If you want to skip past it, scroll down the YouTube comments down below, go to the timestamp where the full video review actually starts. In Francis Drake, each player is a privateer in the service of the Queen of England, trying to cause as much havoc and destruction across the Spanish Main. The game is played over 3 rounds, and each round is broken down into 2 phases. In the first phase of every single round, the players are going to be fighting for resources across Plymouth Harbor, trying to get things such as supplies, which will help them to go further into the Spanish Main. They'll need crew, which will help them to attack cities and attack forts, and they'll also need guns, which will help them to attack forts and also start sinking some galleons in the Spanish fleet. Players will also be able to call upon the assistance of the Queen, which will help them get a more powerful ship, a galleon which is actually powerful enough to start attacking all these Spanish galleons, because your frigate is not powerful enough to do it, so you definitely need to upgrade your ship. You can also use the Admiral, which is going to give you intel and tell you exactly how powerful and how great the defenses of these ships truly are. You can also bribe the governors and try to find out exactly what kind of defenses are protecting all these forts, so you can try to get as much loot and as much plunder and cause as much destruction as you can across the Spanish Main. But here's the greatest challenge in trying to get all your supplies across Plymouth. All these resource spaces are very limited spaces. It's a first come, first serve. Whoever gets there first is going to get the best supplies. And matter of fact, it's even possible for enough players to completely take all the supplies from a certain location. So you need to be quick, you need to be fast, and you need to outsmart your opponents to get all the supplies. Because once all the supplies are gone, the players are going to have to race to get their ships out onto the water, because the person who gets their ships out on the water first is going to get the best picks of all the things they need to attack and cause destruction, and also get the best rewards. And this is where the real heart of the race comes in, because players are going to need to be racing to get trade routes, they need to be racing to get these forts attacked, and they need to be racing to also attack these cities and also attack the ships of the Spanish Main. And you notice that each one of these discs are numbered, so each player is going to put their discs out in order, hidden, so they don't know exactly which order the other players are going out to, and then all the discs are going to be revealed, and whoever gets to each location first is the one who's going to get the best resources, because they're going to have gold, they're going to have gems, and they're also going to have silver, and first come, first serve on all these wonderful bits of loot. On top of that, the Queen of England wants you doing as much destruction across the entire Spanish Main as possible, so she wants you to be attacking cities, she wants you to be attacking forts, and she also wants you to be attacking galleons every single one of these rounds. If you're able to attack all 3 of these, you're going to get much more points than anybody who's only concentrating on one target only, who's going to get a heck of a lot less points. And again, this is a point game. Whoever gets the most points is going to win. In the end, Francis Drake is a game about bluffing, about where you're going to be going. It's going to be a race to see who can get the best supplies. It's going to be a race to see who can get out into the Spanish Main and do the most conquests and win the game. Whoever will be the most efficient privateer in the service of the Queen of England is going to be the grand winner of Francis Drake. Hey everybody, let's get one thing out of the way here really quick. You're going to figure it out anyways once I start talking here in just a few seconds, so I might as well let the cat out of the bag. Well, or the cat on the counter like he likes to do anyways. But I really enjoyed Francis Drake. I thought this was a really good game, which is really surprising to me, because this was actually, first of all, a game that a few people who watched was asking if I can do a video for this game. So I went out and contacted Eagle Games and see if I could get a copy shipped to my house for this game. And they were very nice over Eagle Games. They actually gave me a little bit of a discount, which I thought was really cool. They gave me the Kickstarter price because, well, the Kickstarter is over by now, but when I did contact Eagle Games, they were running the Kickstarter for Age of Empires 3. And they had this plus the expansion for $74, and Eagle Games was nice enough to give me that price, especially since I'm also a Kickstarter backer on that project. So, yeah, in about 6 months, you'll probably see a video for that game from me also. Also, not to go totally off topic here, but they also sent me the expansion with it, which does mean I'm going to do another video series showing the expansion, explaining the differences between the 2-player game and the standard game, and all the extra special things that come in this box, letting you know that this box is definitely going to be worth it if you like Francis Drake. Back on topic, I really did enjoy this game, which is really surprising to me because I didn't know much about this game until a lot of people started asking me if I can do a review for it. I started looking up on the game and thought, looks like another worker placement game, but I'll check it out and see what I like. and I was pleasantly surprised. One of the things that really surprised me about Francis Drake is it's not only a worker placement game where you're basically placing your discs, your cubes, or whatever you're placing across the board, trying to get a very limited supply of resources. And while I'm on that topic, the game is balanced very well in that aspect. The thing that really brought this game to the forefront for me was the bluffing and the secret movement and all the secrecy that goes on when you're playing this game, and how this all goes together to make a very good package, which is better than the sum of its parts. Yeah, we've all played secret kind of games where we're all bluffing and trying to out-bluff each other. We've all played worker placement games. This game has taken both those mechanics, mashed them together in a very fantastic way to create a really, really great game that doesn't have a lot of problems with it. There are a couple of problems. I'll get to them in a moment, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. But the game, for what it is, if you're looking for a game for 4 or more players, this is a fantastic worker placement game with some fantastic bluffing, with some fantastic gameplay where you're trying to figure out what the other players are doing, where they're moving across the board, which resources they're going after, whether you can get to those resources before the other players because you got to put your discs out, allowing you to bluff because you happen to get the ghost ship, getting the hind ship, which is going to get you some extra movement. And not only that, even the fact that a lot of worker placement games, one of the negatives for those worker placement games is that you watch the other players, watch the scores start lapping the score track, and you start realizing that you're pretty much out of the game before the game is over. This game is very cool because that's not necessarily a fact, because you may have a whole bunch of gold, you may have a whole bunch of silver, and you may have a whole bunch of gems hidden in your treasure chest. That's going to give you anywhere from 20, 30, or even 35 extra victory points, plus a couple very good trade routes which can allow you to pull the lead out against other players with a nice victory at the end. This game can also get a lot of bickering and a lot of backstabbing as you start adding more and more players to the game. Now, like I said, Plymouth Board here itself, they did a very good job of balancing everything depending on the player count. You have different tiles right here based on different player counts to ensure that the resources in Plymouth Harbor are always going to be very hotly contested, no matter if you have 2 players all the way up to 6 players. But I'm only talking about the 3 to 5 player experience because I'm not going to include the expansion yet. I'm going to do a separate video for that. Anyways, my point is Plymouth Harbor is balanced very, very well. But once you start adding more players to this game, the actual sailing phase of this game can become very cutthroat and very, very aggressive between all the players, because you are going to start seeing players starting to make some very minute planning decisions, trying to figure out exactly who's sailing where, at what time, based on how far they can get, because they got a certain amount of supply crates that allow them to get to a certain distance across the board, trying to figure out who happens to control the governor, which is going to allow them to know exactly where all the guards are at the various forts. You know, one player has that knowledge. You also know that one player also has the knowledge about the admiral and what kind of guardians are each one of these ships. So you need to kind of play a mind game when you're playing versus the other players, especially if you're the one who's also in control of these. It's a very nice bluffing and mind game where you got to figure out, okay, do I want to place my guardians here, knowing that nobody's going to go out to that spot, meaning it's going to be a waste of my time to place my guardians there, or is this going to be a spot that's really highly contested between a lot of players, and I can put a really high guardian there, and then go ahead and put my ghost ship out there and bluff and pretend it's a spot that I really want really, really badly. So everybody else is going to start throwing their 1 discs and their 2 discs out there, trying to hope they get that location. Well, I've done that entire time as a bluff while I moved my ship to the real location with the lower amount of guns, where I'm going to get the gold, I'm going to get the victory points, and I'm going to get the most efficient use of all my discs. Unfortunately, now we kind of come to one of the biggest negatives I actually have against Francis Drake. And that's the fact that while, like I said, Plymouth Harbor is very well balanced thanks to the use of these discs that's going to allow you to have different resources that players are playing for based on different player accounts, unfortunately, they did not do a mechanic for that in the 3 to 5 player game for the actual sailing phase. So you're going to notice during the sailing phase in a 3 player game, and actually originally when I was going to do my playthrough video, I actually started doing a 3 player game, and I started noticing that you didn't see the good parts of this game, so I actually reshot that complete video with a 4 player game to show you the actual interaction. But with a 3 player game, you notice that the amount of locations across the board always stays consistent. So that means that with only 3 players, there's going to be less competition for each one of these spots. There's basically 27 locations you can go to across the board. Each player only has 4 discs, except the one player is going to have the golden hind. So in a 3 player game, you can do the math. Only 13 of the locations are going to be taken up. But if you start playing the game with 4 players, you're going to add a possibility of 17 different locations taken up. 5 players, you're looking at 21 of those 26 or 27 locations taken up. And then you can start seeing that there's going to be a lot more competition across this board as the spaces are drying up, and you're going to start seeing players also deciding that, do I really want to go after this spot, knowing that my disc is already wasted here, when I go after this other location, which may not be as many resources, but at least it's going to give me a movement on that conquest chart, which in the end may give me more victory points. So you're going to see a lot more of that interaction the more players you add to the game. One other minor quibble I have with the game, and this is much more apparent in the two-player version, you actually see me comment on that when I actually do the review for the two-player expansion for the game, is that you're going to notice that some of these spaces on the board can become very, very powerful at the lower player counts, especially with two players. Especially when you're looking at the player for the governor right here. Now, the governor in a two-player game is obscenely overpowered because the first player to get the governor in the two-player game guarantees that they're going to be the first player in the game every single time they play, because no matter how slow they go through Plymouth Harbor, once they get to the governor space, if they get it, even if they end up in the second place, they're going to use the governor and end up with first place. Also, in the three-player game, the governor is also still pretty darn powerful because you're going to guarantee you're never going last. You're at least going to be second place. Most likely you're going to go in first place, and you spend extra time in Plymouth Harbor getting the extra resources. There's a counter to that. The other players are going to be required to try to screw you over a little bit more if they see that you get the governor and know that you're going to be able to do that. So if the other players aren't afraid to try to screw you over a little bit more, you can kind of counteract that. Just know that in the lower player count games, the governor can be a little bit more overpowered. And also, I do like the fact that in the two-player game, they did include a little bit of a modification to the game, which allows you to start taking certain sections of the board and minimizing them and making them inaccessible. It would have been really nice if they would add that also for the three-player game, kind of minimizing certain sections of the board. And I'm thinking the next time I play this game as a three-player game, I'm going to try a couple different varieties of the two-player mechanic, reducing it a little bit for a three-player game, but that's going to ensure that the three-player game still stays nice and tight. I also want to give one more major comment and appreciation to Eagle Games because they did a fantastic job with the components that come with this game. I believe this game retails for $70. I might be wrong. I'm actually pretty sure $70 approximately. If I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody's going to correct me really darn quickly. But the components in this game are at the quality level of what I've seen in collector's editions or limited editions or anniversary editions of some games. Starting with the player insert that comes with the game box. I can actually flip this up because they have a nice cover here. And there's enough spaces for every single one of the components in the game, even for a six-player game, which you can actually see the components for right here. And I have all the five-player components out on the board, and everything fits back in this box extremely well. High quality box, extra thick box. This box takes a lot of rigor and a lot of damage. The board is thick. These components right here, these aren't cheap cardstock. This is really strong, high quality cardboard. I can throw it around because I'm not worried about taking any damage at all, because they did a fantastic job on that. You also have the gems for this game, and these are those glass Pente bead stones, whatever you want to call them. These aren't cheap plastic, it's actually glass. You got the formed wood for the supply crates. Everything in this game just screams quality for how much you're spending for this game. $70 for all these wooden pieces, glass components, awesome insert, a really damn good rule book that I had no problems figuring out the game from, and something that's really cool for me, especially somebody who has kids who go to a German school. Everything in the game is in German on one side. So the cool thing is when my kids get a little bit older and they're able to play a game that's a little more complex like this, I can play the entire game in German and have a heck of a lot of fun doing that. And then when I am saying a fantastic insert that comes with the game, I truly mean a fantastic insert, because these treasure chests, which are also really cool three-dimensional treasure chests, they fit back in the box perfectly. Eagle, you did a dang good job creating this box insert. Awesome job. Make me feel like I definitely 100% got my money's worth out of buying this game. Every time I do a review for a board game, it's important for me to cover two very important aspects that I don't think gets discussed enough in board game reviews. The first thing is player count in a board game, and the other thing is family friendliness. Now, when it comes to player count in this game, I've already pretty much covered it, but just go over it again in case you fast forward through the video just to get to this point. Gameplay is better with more players. The more players you have, the more contested the player board is going to be when you go out on the shipping lanes. The more cutthroat it is, and the more it's going to require you to actually start trying to figure out exactly what kind of moves your opponents are making, because you're going to start seeing these spaces start drying up very, very quickly, especially when you throw in the expansion for the six-player game. When you have 6 players playing, you're going to start seeing this board fill up really, really quick, and everything's going to be fought over extremely well. And they even managed to do pretty darn good with a 2-player job, or 2-player expansion as the extra rules. But again, I'll cover that when I do the review for the actual expansion itself. The bottom line is, though, this game plays good as a 3-player game, plays better as a 4-player game, and by the time you get to a 5-player count, you're going to have a heck of a lot of fun thanks to all the competition you're going to have on the sailing phase and how well that they manage to balance the game and keep it balanced for multiple player counts thanks to these tiles right here that have different amounts of resources on them based on the player count. And also, I didn't mention it earlier, it's also really cool that these are going to shuffle every single round, ensuring that being the first back at Plymouth Harbor isn't always the best move, and it also adds to the decisions of the game, and that's just something that they did a really great job. The game is balanced at multiple player counts, but again, I think it's going to play better the more players you add, for the simple fact that everything's going to start getting much more contested for. Now, the other point is family friendliness. This game lists as a game for ages 14 and up. Average play time is going to be about 2 hours for this game. And not only is this a game about trading, this is a game about very limited resources, doing the math of extremely limited resources all the time, and basically being a jerk to the other players, trying to get the resources you need before they take those resources from you. So having said that, this is definitely one of those games that's going to take kids who are a little bit older. Probably not a game you're going to play with anybody 12 or under. Maybe a really bright 12-year-old can play this game, but you're definitely going to start wanting to look at the 13 and up range. Not because of what's included in the game, because the components for the game are very family friendly. Don't have to worry about anything imagery-wise younger kids seeing. They can gladly walk by the board, watch what the grown-ups are doing, and you're not going to have to feel guilty and feel like you're having to hide components because there's a bloody zombie with his head being chopped off or anything like that. Definitely not a concern there. It's just the only concern is the fact that this game is going to be very difficult to understand because it's going to take lots of math. It's going to take lots of ability to read the other players, figure out exactly what they're doing. And again, this is definitely a game where screwing over the other player is definitely your objective because you want to take the resources away from them so their nice little ships can't go out there and sail and get all the resources that are going to give you all the victory points. Good suggested age, 13 and up. Good family game if you got the older teenagers. Probably not the best game to pull out with the younger kids. The bottom line here is Francis Drake is a really good 4 or 5 player area control game that has lots of bluffing and the ability to screw over the other players. The game is still pretty darn good as a 3-player game, but you're definitely going to want to figure out some kind of variety of the 2-player rules, which is going to minimize the sailing phase and make all these spaces during the sailing phase much more contested, so the players are going to have to fight even harder to get these locations. And so you also start seeing the players start butting heads more as they're fighting over the same location, which isn't going to happen quite as often with 3 players unless you find a way to minimize the map. That's the only negative I can find with the game, other than the fact that the governor is kind of powerful in the lower player counts. But that's going to be up to the other players to start picking on that player and make sure they don't get all the good bonuses. I think Francis Drake is a fantastic game. Very fantastic components. Awesome insert. Great price range. There's really nothing I can complain about this game if you're looking for a 4 or 5 player game, and even as a 3-player game, or heck, if you're willing to buy the expansion, even as a 6-player game. This has been another off-the-shelf board game review looking at Francis Drake by Eagle Games. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the YouTube comments below. Subscribe to the video, and if you have any questions, you can also email me at ostbgr@gmail.com. If you forget, it's the initials for off-the-shelf board game reviews. Thanks for watching.